You're just gonna make this the worst editing for me. I'm gonna have so many different foods in your hand. We're ready. Do the worm. Hello, internet.
Hey.
So another reason like I wanted to make this video, I feel like there is...
Like, we're important and we have things to say, so...
I don't feel like that. I think rather than focusing on how things aren't the same as the generations before us, we're just more focused on how to get ahead. My generation, millennials, and even Generation Z that's coming, I think we're way more focused on getting an edge. You need an advantage in everything to get ahead, and we don't necessarily value, or we don't have faith that hard work pays off. And I want to kind of explore why that is as well. As far as how much media is a part of our lives now compared to 40 years ago, or like, you know, in like the 80s pre-MTV, how do you feel like it affects our daily life?
Like, we have all these things coming in from different angles, everything from, like I said, watching people die to watching people do random acts of kindness where it just completely desensitizes everything, nothing.
So you feel like there's such an availability on every end of the spectrum that there's like an oversaturation.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a pressure to put your best self out there now because, you know, like entertainer and audience member have like all kind of been meshed together. We went from, you know, TV was on from, I don't know, what, like, I'm guessing like 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then it was off back in the day. And then I feel like, you know, MTV is just kind of a pinpoint I can keep picking, but from MTV on and from the first couple seasons of The Real World on, there was just such an oversaturation of TV, and then with the internet coming in, people figured out how to commercialize reality, in the sense of they were like, okay, we put out every reality show we can, now let's have them use their front-facing cameras and just record each other and view each other, and I feel like we've kind of traded transparency and like being yourself for likes and follows.
And similarities, yeah. So it would be being your best self, whatever that looks like. But I guess the problem in that, I definitely agree. I think the problem in that is that nowadays best can mean anything. Like, savage is cool when the reality is you're just freaking rude. Like, you're just being rude. You're not savage. You're rude and ill-mannered and...
Well, that too. I think that this is our generation's the first generation to experience the damage anonymity can bring.
What does anonymity mean?
Anonymity is being anonymous.
Okay.
We're the first generation that can have complete anonymity, and I can say whatever I want to Gilbert Gottfried, the comedian who played Biago. I can say whatever I want to him to his face and not reveal who I am. And there was a quote, I think it's in V for Vendetta too, but there's a quote of like, you know, you can see who someone really is once you give them a mask. And people are able to hide behind anything they want and become trolls. And not have to take responsibility for any words that they use.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're the first ones dealing with being cyberbullies and experiencing cyberbullying. And I feel like that adds to the desensitized feature too. Like, I definitely agree with that.
So I was just thinking about it right now. We'll sit down. And the best description I can think of to describe it is porn. As soon as porn became free, everybody started watching it. It desensitized people to what actual lovemaking is, and romance, and real life scenarios of being vulnerably naked with a person in a room, and mating, and a way to release yourself, as opposed to an action of love or an action of affection. And that's because we've made sexuality so easy and attainable, and that's what I think of media.
I also, to go back on the sense of self thing, I feel like there's no real individuality anymore. You kind of figure out which camps you feel like you fit in, and then you try and emulate who you feel like you know, are most like in that camp. And then if you don't fit into anything, you're a hipster or you're crazy, like or you're weird.
If you don't fit into what everybody else around you is fitting into, then you fit into the box and you don't fit in.
And they feel like those boxes give them individuality. Like the sneakerheads is the first thing I think of, is like the individuality by fitting in this box. Whereas if I like started posting on the sneakerhead type chats of my Skechers or something, and I really act like I really enjoy it, then I'm weird.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like
Sketcher loving freak.
But I feel like there's no real call to be yourself without some kind of filter on top of it.
It kind of puts people. It's like in defense and on offense at the same time. You're trying to be yourself, love yourself, but you're also trying to be accepted. If anybody opposes against it, immediately you're vulnerable and uncomfortable, because you don't fit into everybody else's box. You're like, you know. So how does that make you feel about everybody else? So since everybody else hates me, well, I just don't wear Nike. I only wear Skechers. You become your own limited edition.
And that could kind of give way to that whole troll vibe. Now you're just messing with people for the sake of messing with people.
It takes away from people who actually do like everything. Because you hear people who are like, well, the simple question of like, what kind of music do you listen to? Almost everybody you ask says everything.
Without
thinking. But the reality is there are lots of things that they don't like.
Yeah.
And I think you're a perfect example of like, you like comic books, you like movies, you like hip hop, you like
and I'm not afraid
retro,
to specify.
And you're not like you can specify because you like those things, and you're not saying it to impress
One
somebody.
thing I would love
like those things.
When people ask you what kind of music you like, just like name the last 2 albums you listen to in a row, or even if you're not an album person anymore, because I guess that's dying too, the last 3 songs on your playlist. Like, give somebody like a neighborhood you kick it in as far as music, because it's so bland and formless to just say, oh, everything but metal, everything but country. I feel like when you do that, how many things are you gonna eat while we do this?
I don't know. Let's count at the end of the year. How many things?
I feel like every time people answer in that way, it reminds me of the episode of Fairly Odd Parents where Timmy says, I wish I was like everyone else, and everyone just comes formless blobs, and everyone just likes everything but country, or everything but I like hip hop except Drake. Nobody says that right now except me. You can't really compartmentalize Prince or Michael Jackson because there weren't compartments for them then. So like put them into a thing. But nowadays it's all about like, oh, so you're like a SoundCloud rapper. Oh, so you're like an underground rapper. So you're like a food for thought rapper. Oh, so you're like a shoegaze artist. Are you like an acoustic alternative artist? Or are you like a bluegrass folk artist? Like there's so many boxes now that we've made. Okay. Let me ask you this. Why can Pepsi make a commercial with Kendra Jenner, let's name her that, about rioting and like trying to monetize like hardship today, but we would have been outraged in 2001 if Pepsi made a commercial with Chris Rock about 9/11. Imagine like a commercial where Chris Rock is just passing like a ice cold Pepsi to some firefighters covered in ash from 9/11 and people are crying. Like why? Or no, let's go like if people are smiling in it and just like, hard day's work cleaning this ash. Why is it okay now to do that and monetize tragedy, but it wasn't okay back in the day? How do you feel like we've gotten here for that?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that's okay. And I think there's a gap in the generations of like people who think that that's okay and people who don't, right? Like people do see that. They're like, wait, no, that's.
I mean, it was
right.
It was okay enough for that it happened. Like why can that happen today, but that couldn't have happened in 2001?
because it is people in our generation making those commercials right now. Those are the people who are our age who have those jobs. What's popular? What are people looking at on social media right now? Oh, all the riots about race, all the riots about Trump, all the riots. People are looking at riots right now. That's popular. Forget what rioting means. Forget what they're rioting for. That's what people are going to look at. So let's make a commercial imitating what people are looking at.
Just media hitting kids so quickly. The fact that my sister can scroll a news feed on any social media and it's like picture of mom, picture of grandma, picture of Trump. Papa John's got banned for saying the N-word. And like all of those things gain the same level of like notoriety in the public eye at the same time is just insane. Companies weren't clever enough to market ourselves to us then and to market real life to you and repackage and be like, this is real life. This is Real World Road Rules Challenge. This is The Apprentice. This is The Simple Life. This is Big Brother 5. This is The Bachelor. This is The Bachelorette. I feel like in 2001, we weren't as primed by cable TVs and the internet combined, spewing everything at us to just accept a commercial about 9/11, but we accept a commercial about rioting. Could you imagine like if in your photo book back in the day, like your photo album, that there's a picture of me in prom and there's an advertisement for Monster Energy drinks. Society has recognized that we are a part of a pyramid now, like they're the one percenters and they're us. And we've kind of lost that idea of like, you could be anything you want because of hard work. Now it's like luck or edge. And the people at the top, the one percenters, have figured out like we can sell them anything. We can sell them themselves. This is Snapchat. This is Vine. That will advertise them in between them looking at videos of themselves. And I just feel like that's kind of how we got here. Do you feel like we as a society value vulnerability and transparency and like vulnerable people nowadays compared to before? And why or not? Why or why not?
My first thought is no. But then I think about Kanye West, who literally released an album about being bipolar.
So does that make you lean more towards yes or no?
I think yes. I think it's just unfortunate that we have mostly weirdos coming out to be vulnerable. Or maybe it's just because, like you were saying earlier, we've, everybody's trying to be their best self, that it's now portrayed as weird. People who are coming out in their different sexual orientations, people who are coming out in their different identity orientations. Like, I feel black and so therefore I'm a black woman. And that's a vulnerable place and a vulnerable thing to admit. But it's weird. And so we don't respect it. Or we have respect for it, extreme respect for it, because we know that that person's being vulnerable. So it's kind of like one end or the other. I think that we don't have too many people that, one, even know who they are.
I don't feel like we as a society celebrate vulnerability anymore. I feel like we celebrate eccentricity. Like how weird, Kanye's crazy, he's doing another crazy Kanye thing, and we meme it up. I think that we as a society know that you kind of become a social leper if you become too vulnerable and gentle and whatnot. We make fun of vulnerable people. Drake was a meme, Drake's still a meme until he became marketable, and now you can't make fun of it. If you really just have like a message of peace or of love, truly of like love yourself, that kind of doesn't ever make it to mainstream.
It would be hard to take anybody seriously, anybody who's trying to promote the right thing. There's no sensitivity to it. Back when we watched Michael Jackson's videos, Heal the World, and watching him go around the country and give food to people and hold babies, and watching these countries that had severe devastation happen to them, that was not what other people were showing on TV. That's not what was seen all the time. And so when you saw it and you saw a great message and a song behind it, it really touched you and struck a nerve. But I can go on the internet, I can scroll through Instagram, and I guarantee you I'm going to see something similar. you know, I'm gonna see. I can go through Reddit and I'm gonna see something similar. Like there's nothing there. I have a way of finding that
But in that
by walking
same
through the park, literally.
in that same sense, Michael Jackson was one to completely, like, We Are the World, Human Nature, Man in the Mirror. He was one to focus on the world coming together. And in that same sense, there was never necessarily a message of violence or sex or any other message for the most part. And one thing people don't really talk about that I love, Michael Jackson never wore jewelry. Michael Jackson never wore one piece of jewelry. He just wore sequins. He wore sequins, plastic, all the time. Never a piece of jewelry. But you will not find any artist, whether it's Drake with Stupid God's Plan or Kendrick Lamar with all the things that he's done to like alleviate gang violence in LA, you'll never not see them with some sense of jewelry or some sense of elevated living. Whereas Michael and Prince didn't necessarily do that. Like, could you imagine if Michael Jackson made a God's Plan video where he just went up to people and started just handing them stacks of money and dancing? Like, we live in a place where we're not surprised by anything anymore. So that's what giving back to the community looks like and goes viral and is marketable.
Well, I was thinking about the term that everybody eats.
Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays that term, has definitely become popular, and the thought process is everybody eats. But the reality is everybody eats because I'm eating. I'm the one that made the way for these people.
And you need to
I'm
know
the one
that.
that provided for them. Like, everybody eats because I'm eating or because I'm paying for it. Whereas Michael Jackson definitely promoted, like, no, not everybody eats, but also everybody needs to eat. Like, listen, we all are on
Like,
the
we
same
are
realm.
the world. We are the children.
Yeah, like that.
We are the ones to start giving.
Exactly. Like it's just human nature,
Why? Why?
Why?
Tell them that it's human nature.
Tell them that it's human nature.
Why?
Why?
Why? Because in that way. Why do you feel like everybody now kind of memes through their feelings rather than like expressing themselves?
I can answer based off of experience, right? So even relating to the whole vulnerability thing, vulnerability isn't idolized and respected and treated as a value the same way emotions are. It's a weakness. It's not putting your best self out there. That's putting your weakness out there. That's putting your reality out there. And I think a lot of this generation, and I can vouch for it, and I'm starting to see it, and I'm not saying that I'm progressing at all. I'm not going to say that, but I do see it.
See what?
That me and a lot of people just don't want to accept what our reality is. And so it's easy to meme it up. It's easy to make fun.
Do you feel like people don't want to accept what their reality is because they're so focused on everyone else's filters and highlight reels?
Yeah. Everybody else around me isn't vulnerable. Everybody else around me is not going to share their feelings, so I can't.
You don't want to do a no filter selfie because no one's doing no filter selfies.
Exactly. I'm going to edit my pics because everybody does it. I'm going to wear makeup because everybody's wearing makeup.
I feel like we all do that now because no one feels, deep down, no one feels like they have a creative thought or a unique feeling that no one else has felt anymore. There's this really funny meme, and it was somebody sitting in front of the therapist and they couldn't figure out how to describe how they were feeling, and they're like, hold on, there's a GIF that really explains it. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at now as a society of like, everybody knows everybody's hurting and we're not really talking about it. So rather than like talking about it, we just kind of send memes. That's how we comfort now.
That's how we
like
comfort each other, yeah.
our comfort food for thought.
Why aren't we taking each other's feelings? Like, what is making it that we can't empathize with each other, that we can't sympathize with each other? Why do I have to look at your depression and go, that's pretty hard, man, and not be like, oh yeah, I felt that before in a different way, and what you're feeling is completely valid, completely true, completely real, and I'm sorry, and I want to love you through this, and I want to help you get through it.
I think it's because everybody's kind of got at least a foot in depression or getting it out of depression right now. And I feel like depression is so widespread and I guess misunderstood now compared to 40 years ago is because we don't necessarily have the same swimming holes that they did then. We don't really stand around the water cooler in the office. We don't go get a drink with the boys after work. Everybody has like a giant pool of acquaintances, and there's no real sense of intimacy anymore between a group of 4 friends. It takes nothing to flake anymore because it's just something you do on your phone really quick. It takes nothing to lie and say I'm on my way when you're still in bed, and people meme about it because it's socially acceptable at this point. And I feel like the people that don't want to admit that it's socially acceptable and that it's wrong are people that are just too wrapped up in it.
I think that's the point, is that not everybody thinks it's wrong. It's not wrong
Because people do it to me.
that you don't care about feelings. It's not wrong for me to not care about your feelings.
Because people do it to me.
People do it to me. Spooky, scary, skeleton.
Keep it going.
I don't know the rest of it.
Just sing it over and over again.
Scary, spooky skeleton. Creepy, ghouly skeleton. Spooky, spoopy, spoopy poo.
Scoopity poop. Right into memes. So that kind of rolls into my last question. So we've talked about where we are as a society. We've talked about how we got here. Where do you feel like we go from here to kind of get out of this hole that it seems like we're in?
I mean, my solution that I've discussed with my husband is that we're going to let our children, well, for one, we're going to pay attention to our children. But 2, we're going to raise them and only watch Hey Arnold and Arthur and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I think recognizing the internet as a tool rather than entertainment is very important moving forward. And, some people don't deserve to have their jobs depending on the things that they say, but the fact that we, as a whole, can kind of out someone for saying something and then them losing their job that day, losing a sponsorship or whatever it is, that's a very, very powerful and influential tool that we all have our hands on. And I don't feel like we understand as a society how crazy that is, and I don't feel like we'll really get a hold on it for a very long time. I don't think that like propaganda back in the day, like World War II and whatnot, I don't think that people understood, or people today still, if you don't like know that much about it, like people don't understand how influential propaganda could be back in the day, and yet we don't look at history repeating itself in fake news. Fake news is propaganda. I don't know why people say fake because
they're not taking the time to educate themselves.
But yeah,
and learn from past mistakes or history.
The history is destined to meme itself if you don't meme. So those are our thoughts. I want to continue to do this more so for me, but I would love if people enjoyed it. Say some corny stuff.
If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, comment, message, tweet, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Live.
If you enjoyed this content,
Push.
please like and subscribe.
Push. Scrub. Poke.
Like and subscribe.
What do they do on Tinder? No one.
Like and subscribe.
Swipe right.